one of my favorite verses that I have held on to for years now is Exodus 14:14, where God says, "Stand still, and I will fight for you." And the Israelites got to see the entire Red Sea part in front of them, and they got to walk through on dry land, and they got to look back and see their biggest enemy for years be taken care of permanently. And I think sometimes, of course on a smaller scale, but sometimes God gives us the blessing to be able to have that kind of experience ourselves, where he opens a door, he shows us the next step, we take it in faith, and then it looks to the world and to us, it looks like, what in the world are you doing? Why did you just do that? What kind of crazy? He makes a way. He opens the next step. And all we are called to do is be faithful in the step that we're in and stay in relationship with God so that we can know when it's time to take the next step. Hey, welcome to another episode of My Ministry, Your Business. Thanks for sticking around. If this is not your first episode that you have listened to, I really appreciate you supporting me, listening in, encouraging my shenanigans, if you will. But if this is the first time that you have checked this out, thank you so much for taking the time to stop by and listen. Now, the purpose of My Ministry, Your Business, as I have said before, is really to encourage other business owners, believers, moms, dads, people in general, right? Where I just want to encourage you to live to the full potential that God has called you to live. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about, I have a story time for you that I'm going to get into, but we're also going to talk a little bit about some lessons I've learned that have led me to this opportunity that I want to tell you about today. So the story time is going to be how I am cast for a TV show. Now, before you get too excited for me, it is definitely a pay to play. So it's not like, somebody came and recruited me and said I was so super, famous or whatever and tried to get me on their TV show. But it is still really cool, and I'm still really blessed that I get to be part of the whole production experience. I'm really enjoying it so far, like getting to kind of see, I mean, this is a new thing for me. So getting to see all the behind the scenes of like pre-production and the things that have to happen and all of that. So it's really fun. It's a really incredible opportunity. There's obviously some apprehension, there's risk with any decision. And so there's a lot, but I do want to share the story because it's a really incredible opportunity that God kind of opened the door for. So I will share that. But one of the things that I have been learning that God has really been working with me on is trust. And I know in one of my previous episodes, I was talking about taking it one step at a time. And that is very hard for me. It is incredibly hard for me. I have to be super intentional about not rushing ahead because I do tend to worry, and I have to stop myself and not carry the things that God has not asked me to carry yet. And it could be a future problem that I worry about, or it could just be me trying to stay 3 steps ahead. And I don't have to. When God is in control, I just have to take the next step. And so I want to encourage you, if you are right now in the middle of, you have an upcoming decision and you're just not sure yet what the next step should be, when the time is right, God will be very clear on what your next step to be is, what your next step should be. And if that is not clear, then it's not time to take the step yet. And something that I had to learn is that if that next step is not clear, it's not time to take it yet, so don't worry about it. You don't have to obsess over trying to find it, trying to make it clear, trying to see in the fog. If it is foggy and you don't see ahead, then you don't have to move. And you don't also have to worry that you're going to miss the boat because God will make it clear. And as long as you are focused on Him and you're trusting Him, you'll be able to see and hear when it's time for you to move to the next step. And there was one time last year where I went on a vacation to Colorado and we went up the, I think it's called what is it called? The Million Dollar Highway, I think is what it's called. Um, and anybody who's been on it knows that it has lots of curves. It's a mountain road, right? You have those switchbacks, you have the, what are they, hairpin curves. Um, and it was beautiful. I mean, if you've never been to Colorado and you have an opportunity to go to Colorado, do it. It is beautiful. But the lesson in it is we were coming down the mountain and we didn't make it down before it got dark. So we're coming down the mountain in the dark and we're trying to go around these curves, in the dark. And with your headlights, when you go into a hairpin curve, with your headlights, they're straight ahead, right? They don't follow the road. So you only see a small portion of that curve until you start to take the curve. And then you still only see a little piece because it's such a tight curve that you don't see the whole thing from your headlights. And it can be a little bit scary because you don't see the whole curve, right? So we're coming down the mountain and it was a very, very, very rough time in my life. And I had been really wrestling with God. And one of the things that he made incredibly clear on that trip was this is how you are living your life right now. A season in your life might be where you know there's a curve. We knew there was a curve there. We didn't know exactly what the curve looked like or how deep it was, but we could see this much in front of us. And then as we moved into that much that we could see, a little bit more was revealed, and then a little bit more was revealed. And we made it safely. Like we couldn't rush, we couldn't hurry through it because you don't see enough of it to know exactly, you can't drive as fast as you do during the day when everything is light. But we made it safely because we saw just as much as we needed as we went around the curve. And that's a season that we can be in. And it was definitely a season that I was in, still kind of am, where I only see just the next step. And then you take the next step. And then when it's time to take the next one, God shows you the next one. So that I just wanted to share the lesson that I have been having in case it encourages you, because there are those seasons in time where we have to just wait or just slow down. And we try to, especially in business, we try to rush the success, or we try to do the next thing, or continue to grow our business, which are all good things, definitely good things. But we don't want to rush ahead of God. We want to follow one step at a time, and He will make the next step clear, and He will make the next step clear. And in doing that, sometimes the trust is really hard. And it's not just trusting God. And I know we all talk about, trusting God, you got to trust God, and you do. And the hard part for me though isn't necessarily the trusting God. It's because I know he's going to be there. He's going to take care of it. I know he's all powerful. He can do it. But the part that I struggle to trust is trusting myself in understanding God. So what I mean by that is, for instance, the next step. I worry that I won't hear when God wants me to take the next step, or I worry that I'm going to miss what the next step should be, that I'm not pushing for it hard enough, or I'm not looking for it hard enough, that I'm going to miss it. So I struggle to trust myself in interpreting what God wants me to do. So just and I don't really I've never really seen or read or heard things around that concept of there's two parts to trusting in what you should be doing and not doing. There's I've just never seen that concept, but that's something that I have been really learning and figuring out how to navigate, is believing, like especially after I make a decision. Making decisions is a hard thing sometimes for me. And so when I make a decision, sometimes I struggle, like in the moment of making the decision, I know for sure, oh yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do. But once the decision is done, then I start to be like, well, did I hear him wrong? Did I misunderstand? Was I supposed to do this instead of that? Like I start to second guess myself really, really bad. And that's where I guess I've been really having to learn how to trust that with the information I had and the guidance that I had at the time, I did indeed make the right decision for that time. So, yeah, I would say the concept is most prevalent when I'm making decisions. And I know decisions are hard for some people. I've had this conversation with a few different people before, and so I know it's not just something that I struggle with. So I do want to share some tips that I use when it comes to decision making in my business, and some things that I have learned um, from actually a program that I'm part of. Leslie Vernick, by the way, if any of you have heard of her, highly recommend her stuff. Um, the when you go to make a decision, there's, I guess, she calls it the decision matrix, but there's like 4 questions you can ask yourself. What is the worst thing that will happen if I don't do it? What is the best thing that will happen if I don't do it? So like worst and best if you don't, and then worst and best if you do. So what is the worst thing that will happen if you do it, and what is the best thing that will happen if you do it? And so, like, you're thinking about worst and best case scenarios for both if you don't and if you do. That has been a huge help for me, because I'm kind of a best worst case scenario type of person where if I'm second guessing myself, I always go to worst case scenario. It's just, I don't know why. It's a weird thing I do. So, um, with the decision matrix, you kind of imagine the 4 corners, if you will, of the decision, where what is the best thing that happens if I do it, best thing that happens if I don't do it, worst thing that happens if I do it, worst thing that happens if I don't do it. And then that kind of allows you to evaluate the risk, because with every decision comes a risk, right? There's risk with anything that we do. There's risk with starting a business. There's risk with not starting a business. I mean, in some ways, there's more risk for working for a full time job because it's considered more secure, right? If you're if a W-2 employee of a company, that's considered secure. But the problem is you're never guaranteed a job. And I have friends that, they got laid off without a notice. And so when that happens, you start to realize, like, whether you're running a business, you have risk. Whether you're going to work for someone else, you have risk. So it's kind of any decision you make, there is risk involved. And being able to kind of like look the risk in the face and figure out what risk am I willing to take can take some of that pressure off of making that decision. At least it does for me. And a lot of times when I can't seem to make sense out of it all, I just kind of pause and step back and either come to it later, or no decision is also a decision. So sometimes I just step back and see, okay, well, if that's really what God wants me to do, then he's going to make the next step obvious. Like he's going to open that door for me. He's going to make that opportunity available, which kind of leads me into the story time about TV. So when a couple weeks ago, I had a friend of mine in the bookkeeping space, mention to me, like, hey, you know those ads you see of, like, they're doing casting calls for different TV shows, and there's like ones for moms, like mom entrepreneurs and stuff. You would be great for that. Like, you should apply for that kind of a show. And I was like, oh, I mean, that's funny. Never seen that, but that's funny. That's a funny thought. And then the next the next day, she actually sent me the post, the casting call, whatever, and was like, you should apply for this. This is what I was talking about. And when I think TV show, I think like reality TV or some big production thing, right? And I was like, there is no way that I am inviting that into my personal life, into my home, into my space with my kids. There's just that, yeah, I'm not doing that. Well, as I started researching the show and the process and what you get out of it and all this kind of stuff, I realized that it was something done off site. So I go to a studio and film. It's very different than what I had originally thought when I thought TV show. And so I was like, you know what? I can at least apply. What's the worst that can happen if I apply? If I'm not supposed to do it, I definitely will get a no or whatever. If I get a yes, then we'll cross that bridge later, right? So I applied. My application got approved. I was invited to book a casting call. I booked the casting call, and the email series leading up to the casting call was saying, like it will take 24 hours and we'll give you a decision. And then if you get the green light, then we'll tell you more details and yada, 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 right? So outline this whole process. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to hop on the casting call and we'll see where it goes from there. So I hop on the casting call, share my story. And in the meantime of all of this, I was doing research on the company. Reading their reviews, researching like all the different things, like because I have to think of safety precautions with some stuff I have going on in my personal life. I have to be very careful with what all I'm doing and what all I'm saying and where I'm putting myself. And so that was a big concern for me. So I started doing a bunch of research and figuring all these things out and doing some background. And so I got on the casting call and we're talking and she's asking me questions and she asked me some questions about the company itself. And, I was answering some questions and she's like, wow, you've really dug. She's like, usually I have to, she's like, the next stage is usually I share some information about the company. She's like, but you kind of already know the things I would talk about. So we're going to move on. And so we move on in the call. And then she goes, you know what? I'm giving you the green light right now. Let's talk about next steps. And I was like, well, that was supposed to be my fleece, if you will, right? Like, but it's one of those things where I've run my business in a way that I try to say yes to opportunities, even if I'm not sure where I'm going or why this, like, even if I'm not sure the opportunity directly applies to what I'm working on. I try to always have an open mind and say yes as much as possible. I have a thing where I say yes until the no is obvious. And so for me, this was one of those instances where I was like, sure, what can it hurt to say yes? Sure. And then the door opened, and then the next door opened. And so one of my big goals for this year is to get on speaking stages. It's a really something near and dear to my heart that has just become more and more prevalent as the years have progressed. Coming from the teaching background, like I really love sharing with people and teaching things and that kind of thing. So this being part of this show and kind of what it promoted and everything was right in line with that. And like I said, it is a pay to play. So it's not like I caught the eye of some big production company. It is definitely not that. But it is incredible the way that back in May specifically, so it's been a couple years when I have been like, I really enjoy speaking. Like I had an opportunity to speak, loved it. It energizes me, it fires me up. And I was like, I really love that. And so then I had some more opportunities, and it's been a couple years in the making. And now looking back, I see God leading me where 2 years ago, had the podcast opportunity or this kind of an opportunity come up, I would not have been ready for that. And just seeing the way that God has walked me so faithfully in the path that He has, taking that one step at a time, trusting Him even when things didn't make sense, trusting Him that He would bring it all together in a way that made sense at some point. And so then, just back in May, is kind of when all the pieces to the podcast came together. And I really, really, really felt even a stronger calling to begin to be brave enough to speak up and to share the things I've learned, the ways I've run my business, the experiences I've had, that kind of thing. And just the doors that God has opened throughout this summer, and now these opportunities and things like that. It's incredible to see the way that God has continued to walk with me and been faithful and not opened doors into rooms that I wasn't ready for yet. And there are doors right now that are open that I feel unprepared to walk into, but I know that God would not open them if He didn't also have a way to help me move into that room and into that space and to shine His light. And it makes me think of the verses that say, when we're weak, that's when God's strength is apparent. And that is what I feel so many times when I am helping people, whether it's helping them build out their automations or helping them with their numbers or whatever it is. Whenever I'm helping people, there are so many times where I feel like I am the least prepared person to help them. There are so many people who are so much more equipped, who are so, you know, have all the experiences, they have more credentials, they have the letters behind their name, whatever it is. But yet God has put me here. I am the one that God is using. And I pray that in my in my following him, trusting him as I take one step at a time, is that he will be very clear and that people will see him and the way that if he can do it for me, he can do it for you. And if he can use me, he can use you. And if he can make a difference in the world, whether it's little or big, if he can make a difference in the world through me, he can also make a difference in the world through you. And it might not look the exact same way, or it might not be the exact same way. It won't be, because he uses each one of us unique because we are unique. But he can use us if we just follow him one step at a time, if we just trust him and don't second guess ourselves. But if we just follow him as he opens the doors or as he makes the next step clear, if we just follow him, he will make a way. He will make a difference in the world. Um, and in doing all of that, one of the things that I have uncovered is the power of limiting beliefs. And I think sometimes limiting beliefs can be one of the harder mindsets to overcome because you don't even realize you have them. You don't realize that you're putting a limit on what God can do just by when you're living everyday life. There are moments where, especially when, like decisions come up or things start happening, I realized that success scared me more than the fear of failure. And I have a lot of limiting beliefs around that I'm working through. And part of it, was a matter of safety. And so if you're in a situation where safety is a concern, um, you don't want to push past the safety issues. Your time will come. Your season might not be now. Staying safe is a more important focus if that's your season that you're in. But I have now moved into I need to get really curious about limiting beliefs. So here's, I guess, the encouragement out of what I've learned so far. The encouragement that I would leave you with is, if fear comes up for you, and if it's whether it's, you're going to go do something, or you're offering a new product in your business, or you're offering a new service line in your business, or you have a new opportunity come up, whatever it is, that fear that bubbles up, get really curious around it, and not just on the what are you scared of side of things, but what is your mind trying to limit you? Like, why is your mind trying to limit you? Because if it's an opportunity, that typically is a good thing, right? So what is your mind trying to limit you, and why? And what does that, like, where is that coming from? So just, I guess, my encouragement would be, get curious. That's what I've really had to do lately with myself, is just to get really curious around different belief systems or mindsets or emotion that comes up that's kind of unexpected. Um, yeah, just get curious, start asking you some questions, sit with that, sit in the quiet and listen to hear if it could be a limiting belief. And there have been moments where I've had to remind myself that, Heidi, we serve a God that was dead, and came to life. Like, what more? How much more powerful could we need something to be when we serve a God that died for 3 days and then rose again? Why am I limiting myself? And I'm not saying it in the sense of, you just run ahead and you are like, well, God can make it all work out. I'm saying in the sense of when you are walking step by step with God, and when God's opened the door and made your next step clear, why are we scared? And I'm saying this to myself because I am. Why are we scared to take that next step when we serve a God that is powerful enough to rise from the dead? And so that's the question I'll leave you with is if something feels scary or that there's risk or that maybe you don't feel like you're the best fit for the opportunity, if God has opened the door and is leading you into that next step, then trust Him that He will also walk with you. And I think about the Israelites when they left Egypt. I have to really put myself in what I imagine their shoes to be, right? Where they've been in Egypt for what 400 years and they've got to be exhausted because they've been overworked. There's just a lot, right? They've been slaves for years. And they're walking into the wilderness and they're finally getting their big break. They're finally, getting saved out of this mess that they've been in Egypt for a long time. And I imagine like how relieved and how excited they must have been, even though they were probably starving and weak and tired. And they barely get out and they're being chased by this entire army. Like how terrifying must that have been? Because I'm sure they were already scared of the Egyptians because they had been slaves to them for years. And they're coming out into the wilderness and here's this army, their biggest terror, following behind them, and then they come up on the Red Sea. I mean, you gotta imagine, like, what in the world was going on in their head? Like, Moses, are you sure? Like, even in Moses' mind, right? You think about it, God was very clear that their next step was to get out of Egypt. God was very clear about that. And so I sometimes wonder, like, did Moses ever not question God, but question himself in hearing God? Like, I wonder if he got to the Red Sea and thought, God, I know you told us to come out. You've gotten us this far with the pillar of fire and the pillar and the cloud. Like, what are you doing? Did I hear you wrong, or what is going on? And then one of my favorite verses that I have held on to for years now is Exodus 14:14, where God says, "Stand still, and I will fight for you." And the Israelites got to see the entire Red Sea part in front of them. And they got to walk through on dry land. And they got to look back and see their biggest enemy for years be taken care of permanently. And I think sometimes, of course on a smaller scale, but sometimes God gives us the blessing to be able to have that kind of experience ourselves, where He opens a door, He shows us the next step, we take it in faith, and then it looks to the world and to us, it looks like, what in the world are you doing? Why did you just do that? What kind of crazy are you? But then he makes a way. He opens the next step, and then you see the next step, and then you see the next step. And all we are called to do is be faithful in the step that we're in and stay in relationship with God so that we can know when it's time to take the next step. And so that is some of the lessons that I've been learning along the way. That's hopefully an encouragement to you. I would love to hear some lessons that you've been learning, or if this, relates at all, or if this is encouraging to you at all. So thank you so much again for listening. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully you found some encouragement out of today's little story time.